Hello everyone, this is 1-800-LAWYER-UP from FormalFocus.com, and welcome to my secret public diary. Entry number 4 entitled, Welcome to Candyland. Now, before we begin, I am indeed a lawyer. I crossed the bar in 2018. However, I joined the 2 Comma Club because I was smart enough to make some wise investment decisions. So I no longer need to work. I am quasi-retired. I only really go back for pro bono worthy cases for freeze because I gotta bank some karma points for all the other bastardly things I say online as a gamer. My God, St. Peter would blush at the pearly gates. So since I am inactive as a lawyer, the Law Society of Alberta, sort of the governing body of my occupation, has said if you're inactive, you can't give out any legal advice whatsoever. So please, if you are seeking legal advice, find a lawyer in your area who is actively practicing and get advice from them. That's just common sense. Don't get legal advice from a lawyer online that is not practicing. Finally, this is completely unscripted. I don't re-record. I actually have 0. I usually have like 3 points, which keeps me on track on what I want to talk about in a diary entry. But I actually have nothing in front of me right now. I'm lying down on my couch looking at a possibly disgusting, dirty ceiling fan that I'm unable to clean because I've got like a vaulted living room ceiling and there's no way to get to it. And, I've been living in this house for a few years and it's probably disgusting up there. But ADHD, that's why I need the points. But I don't re-record. It keeps the genuineness of these secret diary entries because it's my random thoughts. So with that, we all know the rules. Welcome to episode 4. Welcome to Candyland. And basically it's going to discuss the different levels of court and how laws are actually made in Canada. And I'm pretty sure this also applies at least to the British Commonwealth, maybe the States. I don't know. You talk to an actual lawyer in your area to find out. But in Canada, there are 2 ways. There is statutory law, so politicians get together in those big government buildings with their marble floors and walls and statues of dead prime ministers and I don't know what they have in there. I've never stepped foot in there. Anyway, they get together and they say, okay, we're drafting up a new bill or an act to solve X problem, right? So let's say they get together and they say there's a lot of unhappiness in the world because of the pandemic and everyone's kind of losing their minds. So in order to make happy, see, that's happy, yes, from Iron Man. But in order to make people happy, they've instituted a new bill called Welcome to Candyland. And everyone in Canada over the age of 21 every Sunday gets a truckload of candy. So politicians get together, they form these laws, and now it's statutory law, and all the courts have to enforce it. Now, the courts, each province has 3. There is the lower provincial court, and it's actually called provincial court. This is usually for like summary conviction stuff, which is like, like theft under 500 type stuff.
It here is criminal and regulatory offenses, civil cases up to 50,000, family, youth, and traffic cases. So it's like an entire mishmash. It's basically like a bar from Tatooine. And what I would do back when I was practicing is if I was early to court, if I had like half an hour of time, or if my particular matter was lower on the list, I would just walk into provincial court and just see what was going on, because it's better than like Judge Judy sometimes. There'd be people, like neighbors, fighting over lawnmowers or something like that. Now, the thing with this court is that they're newer judges, so they've been lawyers practicing for at least 10 years. They get elected to the bench, and because they're new and they're learning how to make proper judgments, it's a statutory court. So whatever is in the statute, they actually have to follow, regardless of whatever the context is. So you'd be guilty of theft if you do A, B, and C, even though the circumstances were, a little different. And, different to the point where the judge would like to rule differently, but since it's a statutory court and they have to follow what's in the statute and the act, but if the decision is bad, then you can actually appeal to a higher court, like the Court of Queen's Bench is the next level, and the judges there, along with the next highest level, the Court of Appeal, have the ability to actually interpret the law, take into the context, and rule differently from what it says in the statute because of mitigating circumstances. And if that doesn't work, then you get to go to the Supreme Court of Canada, and the decision there becomes the supreme law of the land.
So, we've got a welcome to Candyland legislation for people who are over 21 years old, and they get a truckload of candy every Sunday because, people are sad, and this is their way of making people happy. And there are obviously some problems with this because it's an insane idea that I had a few minutes ago, and I'm running through it live, and I can't re-record. It's disastrous. So what happens? You're an individual, let's say you're a diabetic, right? And you actually have medical reasons as to why you can't participate in this legislation. So basically what you're getting every single Sunday as a 21-year-old is a truckload of candy that's basically a slap in the face because you can't eat it. So what do? You hire a lawyer. You go to a fancy court, probably the Court of Queen's Bench since it is federal legislation. And a judge who, since it's a higher level of court, not provincial court, they actually do have the ability to read into the law and do a process called statutory interpretation. So they can read into the statutes and figure out exactly why the legislators made this law. And, it's in order to make people happy. It's a pandemic. People are kind of sad. And candy always makes people happy unless you're insane or a diabetic that can't eat it. So a judge is going to look at that and say, well, obviously the legislators didn't mean, to give candy to diabetics, so we're going to change that law. Well, not change it, but create a case and decision which will be a precedent for other diabetics who find themselves in a similar situation.
So as a lawyer, you would, if you find yourself in that situation, you would just use that case name that came out with that decision. So you can say the diabetics of Canada versus the Canadian government or something like that, right? And then the judge ruling that would automatically know what you're talking about, and you don't need to explain yourself. You just say the case name, and the case would actually explain all your legal reasoning for you. Now, in a situation where, let's say, new material evidence comes out for the opposing party, and let's say it's insane, but let's say like Harvard University Press, a respected scientific journal that's peer-reviewed, comes out with an article saying candy helps out diabetics and insane people. Sure, it makes them sick a bit, but the benefits outweigh, the happiness benefits outweigh any negative effects, right? So they're actually able to take that Court of Queen's Bench decision and move it to the higher level and appeal it to the Alberta Court of Appeal. And let's say the judge takes in the new evidence and he says, these guys are respected, it's Harvard, these guys are scientists, and they're saying that candy's just good for you, regardless if you're a diabetic. So that judge says you just have to eat candy, regardless if you want it or not. Kind of see how the law develops. So first, legislation's brought down from politicians. Then it skips over provincial court since it requires some interpretation. So we're at the Court of Queen's Bench. The Court of Queen's Bench judge says, okay, if you're a diabetic or you're insane, then you don't need to eat the candy. Then new material evidence comes out from Harvard University Press. It gets to the Alberta Court of Appeal, and then the judges there say, this evidence is pretty compelling. You just have to eat it. So it'll go all the way to the Supreme Court of Canada, since that's an insane decision. And then those guys with their Santa Claus outfits, which makes them super official, they make their final decision, and that decision is kind of the last kick at the can, and whatever they decide is kind of the supreme law of the land. And, the lawyers that usually run the Supreme Court of Canada cases, they're kind of rock stars. It's kind of like reaching 5th general, on general 5-star jet. That's what it was. And it was like Halo 3, and it was a long time ago, and I know they've got Halo MCC, but,
Yeah, 5-star general. Lawyers that are like 5-star generals when they run cases at the Supreme Court of Canada. So there's going to be a Supreme Law of the Land dealing with the new legislation. Welcome to Candyland. It's gone through the 3 levels of provincial court all the way up to the final 4th level, the final boss level, the Supreme Court of Canada. And that's how common law becomes actual law, like at the federal level. So there's statutory law, where a bill's initially introduced, and then people on the ground trying to obey that law run into problems, and the common law precedent just kind of like eventually evolves into something special, which could reach all the way up to the Supreme Court of Canada and become federal law. But that's how laws are made. Hopefully you enjoyed it, you learned something, and I will see you next time.